Okay, let's review Fifo and Lifo. These are two inventory methods that are used in the course of business to track the cost of inventory. Merchandisers purchase units throughout the course of the month at varying cost points. Okay, so here we have an example of Bonita Company, which makes 3 purchases throughout the month. So let's first of all understand, when we see the word units, let's imagine a product here. Let's imagine an iPhone case, okay? So imagine that Bonita Company is a company kind of like Target, all right? They go to a company like Apple and they say, we're willing to sell your iPhone cases. They're gonna buy the iPhone case for in this case, $6 from Apple, and then turn around and maybe sell to the customer for 20 bucks, okay? So Bonita Company makes its profit by being the merchandiser that's putting the iPhone case in the hands of the customer. So the key here is that Bonita Company is going to make several purchases throughout the month. They're going to purchase 330 units at $6. Okay, then they're going to sell a bunch of those, and they're going to say, okay, we need to replenish our stock. And they're going to buy 490 more units. But now the cost has gone up to $7. Okay, and this will happen. This is normal in the course of business. Prices do not stay stagnant. Okay, the prices go up for us as customers over time. The same is true for merchandisers who are purchasing from manufacturers. So they sell out more of their units, their iPhone cases, and then they say, okay, we need another 210 units, and we're going to spend $8 per unit. So the question is, at the end of the month, they have 360 units left. What's the cost of those units? Now, we need a way to systematically and methodically understand the cost and kind of price out the cost. Because what's complicated here is that we have 3 different cost points. So these inventory methods, what they're meant to do is provide a systematic way to work through the logic of the varying cost point. Okay, so let's review what first in and first out means just from a conceptual standpoint. Okay, so let's take a look at the big picture here first. And what we'll do is we'll then step through the mechanics of the math for each of these inventory methods. So the first thing to note is first in, first out says that the first units that we purchased are assumed to be the first ones that get into the hands of the customers, meaning these units are going to be what we assume are sold first. Okay, first in, first out. Now this is, in contrast, we have last in, first out. Now last in, first out says the last units that we purchased are assumed to be the first ones that we're accounting for as sold to the customer. Now, companies do have purpose for choosing one of these methods. There is an impact on cost of goods sold and also in ending inventory in terms of the value of each of those items on our income statement and our balance sheet. So companies have a reason for choosing first in or first out, or last in, first out. And each of these methods is a costing method. So it's a systematic way to track the inventory. And really the moving variable here is this cost point that is moving typically up over time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to step through the mechanics of computing first in, first out versus last in, first out. And what we're going to end up doing is computing the cost of the ending inventory. Okay, let's first take a look at FIFO. Now FIFO assumes that the first units that were purchased, the first units in, are the first units that were sold. Okay, and remember, this is a costing method. It's a way to systematically price our inventory that was sold and the inventory that is remaining. So we're told that 360 units is our ending inventory. Well, we know that we had 1,030 units total, okay? Which means that 1,030 units minus 360 equals, so we had 670 units that were actually sold. Okay, so 670 sold, 360 remaining. So one way to think about this is, we had 330 units sold at the $6 price point. And then we had another certain number of units sold at the $7 price point. If we sold 670 total minus 330, that means that we must have sold 340 units at the $7 price point. So this in total is 670 units. Now this is what we sold. These are the units that were sold. And then we have some amount of units that are left and that are ending inventory. So let's figure out what those are. So let's figure out those. Well, we know that this entire layer of inventory is going to be included in our ending inventory because we know that we have 360 units. So 210 must be part of that 360. So let's put a 210 right there. So then how many of this 490 unit layer is remaining? Well, we can just use some basic math. We can say 490 minus 340 is 150 units. Okay, so 490 minus 340 equals 150 units. Now, 150 plus 210 is 360 units. This is our ending inventory. And now the question is, what's the cost of this ending inventory? What's the dollar amount? So remember, these are the units, but we need to actually put a price to them. Well, we've got 150 times 7 and 210 times 8. I'm going to do this on the side here. 150 times 7 is 1,050. 210 times 8 is 1,680, which tells us that our ending inventory is 2,730. This is the answer. Now, remember, 2,730 is comprised of 210 units at the $8 price point, and then 150 units at the $7 price point. So notice, we are taking the various units that we purchased and we are systematically working through saying, okay, which ones are we going to assume are sold first? Those are the ones that are going to be part of our cost of goods sold. The remaining units that we haven't yet sold, those are going to be part of our ending inventory. And this is how we get to this answer. This definitely requires you to lay this work out on paper or in Excel, do the math. And what I want you to do is I want you to kind of use a tabular format. We will go over this as well on Thursday in class, okay? But this is a kind of a brief sort of preview. Okay, let's take a look at Lifo now. Lifo is last in, first out, meaning the units that were purchased last are the ones that we assume are sold first for purposes of costing our inventory. Now, let's approach this a little differently from the Fifo example. And I'm going to suggest this because I want you to know that there are different ways we can think about this, and also the math is a little bit easier to think about this as well. So last in, first out means that these last layers are sold first, okay? Meaning we're going to assume that this is part of our cost of goods sold, okay? These later layers, which means our ending inventory is going to be comprised of these first layers. Now the math here is a little bit easier. If we assume that we have 360 units at the end, then that means 330 are at the $6 price point, and the math is fairly easy here. That means we need another 30 units at the $7 price point. This adds up to 360 of ending inventory, and let's compute this. So 330 times 6 is $1,980, $1,980. And 30 times 7 is, of course, $210. We add those two together, and we get $2,190. This is the cost of our ending inventory, assuming Lifo. We'll work through this as well in class, but hopefully this is a good preview, and we will. This is a topic that you definitely need to work through. You might have questions. You might stumble through the math. The learning is in the doing.